I'm an ecologist with Bayou Land Conservancy. And today we're going to be talking about some of my favorite animals, some of our favorite local taxa. It is an absolutely gorgeous day in Houston, Texas today. It is sunny, it's about 60, which means that I get to wear a sweater. Pretty exciting. And my heater kicked on for the first time of the season last night. So that means we are really getting into some fall weather, which I know we're all ready for. Okay, well, let's dive into your questions for this week. Our first question comes from a watcher who's asking, once, during the drought some years ago, I was walking through the woods very close to my home, and a coyote walked right across my path. His nose was to the ground, and he paid no attention to me. Obviously, he was tracking something. How common are coyotes here? And would they often come that close to human dwellings, or did the drought force them closer in? So if you're a local Houstonian and frankly just a Texan or member of the United States, we probably all remember that 2011 and 2012 were really exceptional drought years. Even really 2010 to 2012 were pretty exceptional drought years. And a lot of the trees and habitats around the area are still sort of recovering from that period of drought where we just didn't get any rain. And so that's what this question is about, is that period of time when we were in a really bad drought and people were starting to see some things that they didn't usually see in their backyard. So about coyotes, they're one of the most adaptable species in the United States and maybe one of the most adaptable species on planet Earth as we know it. They are a textbook generalist species, and that means that they can thrive in a multitude of different habitats and a multitude of different ecological niches without too much trouble. They're able to adapt to disturbances in their environment pretty easily, and as a result, they are pretty common in urban environments and at the urban and wildland interfaces. Their population in the United States has risen dramatically since 1900, which is a time where many mammals have been in decline, but in fact coyotes have really, really boomed since then. And most recently, they have moved into the southeastern United States. And when I say southeastern United States, I'm not including Houston and Texas in that. I mean, the areas like Florida, North Carolina, those areas have the most recent populations of coyotes. They've been in Texas for longer than that. And so all that is to say, I'm not surprised that you ran into a coyote in an urban or a suburban area, because they are pretty common in those what we call edge habitats, where the wildlands are meeting the human populations, and they're creating that edge. And coyotes really, really thrive in that edge. Another animal that does well in an edge habitat is deer, and I would venture to guess that you see a lot of deer in that same area. So anytime a predator occupies the same space as humans, there's always a concern of safety. But considering how many coyotes we have in urban environments, coyote attacks on humans are exceedingly, exceedingly rare. You do want to watch out for your pets and your poultry, your agricultural animals. But coyotes are usually encountered in the same manner in which this encounter described them, which is the coyote is busy doing something else, not very interested in you, and you're seeing it in a transient moment. Now, in terms of whether it's more common to see them during a drought, during environmentally stressful times, be it drought or fire or flood, animals are going to be on the move because their usual resource hideouts for food, water, and shelter have either moved or changed or disappeared completely. And so they're having to scout out new areas where they can persist and thrive. And so you are a little bit more frequently going to see animals transitioning to new areas and new habitats where you maybe haven't seen them before during those really stressful environmental times. So that is not a surprise to me that during a period of intense drought that was really stressful on the flora and fauna of the area, that you saw an animal that you don't usually see around your house. But like I said, most encounters that people have with coyotes are the ones that are described here, which is the animal is moving along, and I saw it real quick, and then it went away. So it's important to not feed any wildlife. Those are the most that has the highest potential for dangerous interactions is whenever you start to feed wildlife. But it sounds like this coyote was behaving very normally and just looking for a place to either eat, drink, or hide out while the conditions were really, really tough. So thank you for your question. Okay, so last week we started our series on the animals that are being featured at the Landlover Gala this year. So the Bayou Conservancy Landlover Gala is November 13th, that's the Friday, from 6 to 7 p.m. and it's virtual this year and it's totally free to attend. You just go to the link on our website and register yourself to attend. And our sponsorship levels this year are named after some of our favorite woodland organisms. So last week we went over the beautyberry and the bobcat. This week we are going to talk about the mockingbird and the possums. So these are two animals that we've chatted about on Ask an Ecologist in the past, and I'm going to go over some different aspects of them. So mockingbirds, of course, are our Texas state bird, and we have chatted on Ask an Ecologist about how it learns its songs from its environment. So each bird sort of gets this repertoire of songs, and sometimes older birds are going to have a broader repertoire than younger birds. And that can actually help them attract mates because females are like, hey, this guy's been around for a long time. He sings a lot of different songs. He must be pretty clever. I'm going to choose him. Another notorious characteristic of the mockingbird is how loud and territorial it can be. If you are in an area where you see mockingbirds, you'll often see them come up to a window or an area where that has like some reflective surface, and they'll do this display thing where I'm going to try and imitate it. They like go up like that with their wings, and it kind of looks like a robotic arm movement. And that's one of the behaviors that they display to say like, hey, I'm in here, like this is my area, and everybody needs to respect me in this area. So mockingbirds will kind of famously patrol their territory and perform those behavioral displays. And interestingly, a recently published study indicated that neighborhoods that have more lead in their soil had markedly more territorial mockingbirds. So it's interesting to think of that connection there between having like lead in your soil. Maybe it's a more impacted neighborhood and they end up having way more aggressive mockingbirds. Anecdotally, the researchers talked about how they would use these sort of like fake stuffed birds to try and get a response from the mockingbird that they were studying, and they basically had to put the stuffed bird in a cage, otherwise the mockingbird was just gonna tear it apart. So even in normal conditions, they are they're bold, they are courageous, and they are not afraid to let you know that you have entered its territory. And whenever you think about it and you think about how much primo habitat birds have lost, you can't really blame the mockingbird for wanting to be really, really protective of the habitat that it occupies. So interesting things about mockingbirds. They are definitely they're the Texas state bird, and they're definitely bold, just like Texans have a reputation for being. And now possums. Possums are a small to medium, I would say small, I'm gonna say small mammal that kind of have a maligned reputation that is slowly being reclaimed as we learn more about how important it is to us. So when possums feel threatened, they'll bare their teeth at the perceived threat, and so humans can get that interaction where they're getting like the teeth bared by a possum, and so that's sort of given them their reputation for being aggressive, when in fact possums are just super dramatic. And that's where we get the phrase playing possum, where they will like play dead whenever they have a perceived threat. I mean, they are just going to be really, really demonstrative about their feelings to try and scare you away. In reality, most possums are either going to play dead or try to get away from you or try to get you to go away from it without having to have an actual conflict. It doesn't behoove them to pick a fight with you, so they're not really particularly interested in that. On the flip side of the coin, though, possums have been studied and discovered that they will eat mountains and mountains of ticks, which is something that you don't want in your backyard. I don't want in my backyard. And so it's really awesome to have that free pest control through possums. Additionally, because they have that sort of grimacing, teeth-bearing behavior, people just sort of associate that with that's a rabid animal. And actually, possums have a body temperature that makes it pretty difficult for them to carry diseases, including rabies. So of all of the mammals that you're to encounter, you're pretty much least likely to have an encounter with a possum carrying rabies. It's not impossible, but it's extremely, extremely unlikely. So they're perhaps not as fearsome towards people as originally thought. And so people are starting to come around towards possums and understand their value and their importance in our ecosystems. So I'm going to leave it there for this week. Thank you for joining me. Please do not forget to submit your questions. You can comment on this video. You can send us a Facebook message. You can email us at info@bayouland.org. We'd love to hear your questions. And next week's going to be the final series of the different taxa that we're going to be featuring at this year's gala. I look forward to talking to you then. Bye-bye.